My name is Pinar. I'm from the Luxembourg Center for Systems Biomedicine. I'm going to talk today about our tool called DAISY, Data Information System. It's a tool to record biomedical research data for accountability under the GDPR. So, if you're working with biosamples and data from living human subjects, the GDPR has an effect on your operation. This comes as a surprise to some researchers, but it has impacts to research. The GDPR has come into force for more than a year now, and it has 6 principles. It requires you to process data about people lawfully in a fair manner and in a transparent manner. You need to keep accurate information about people. You need to use it only for the purpose you collected. You need to only keep the data that you need and nothing more. You can only keep data for a limited amount of time, and you need to secure the data. You need to assure confidentiality and integrity. So we have, GDPR outlines all these 6 principles and then says you will be expected to demonstrate that you are compliant with these principles, and this is where our tool supports. So the controller, which is essentially in this case the research PI, is responsible for demonstrating that you are doing this in your work. So what does that mean for a research institution? So when the day for the dreaded GDPR audit comes, the institute will be asked these 3 questions. What data do you have? What human data do you have? So for that, you need to know which groups have which data and so on. What is the legal ground for having that data? And there can be different legal grounds. You might be running a cohort, so that's consent-based legal ground. Or you may have received the data from a repository, so you have a data use agreement with the repository. Or you may have received it from a collaborator, so you have an agreement with that. And you need to answer for how you are protecting the data. So this could be organizational measures or technical. So you can encrypt the files, you can do pseudonymization, or you can do trainings, you can have a code of conduct for your admins, but you need to show to the auditor that you're doing all this. So this has kind of caused the business of GDPR data mapping to come up. So if you go and search the web on GDPR data mapping, you'll see a number of tools that allow you to do documentation about all of this. And people have, some institutes, universities have started, deploying these things to answer for what data they have. Well, with or without a tool, data mapping is a very difficult exercise because it requires multiple parties. So the researchers know what projects they're running and what data they have. The legal team know what contracts have been signed and with which partners and what's their expiry and if they have the GDPR clauses. And the IT team knows which platform is secured in what way. So essentially what you need is to bring all this information together. And without a tool, it's essentially a bunch of Excel files in different parts of the institute and a bunch of emails going around between people and documents. So the existing GDPR tools, what they do is they're quite generic and process-oriented. So let's say I'm a university, I'm trying to document what I'm doing, and it allows you, it views the world in terms of processes. So I would say as a university, I have a student recruitment process, I get application forms, and then I generate a database. So I have this process and I run it like 1,000 times, it doesn't change. But this doesn't really apply for research because research runs over projects. So data information system talks the researcher's language for representing their work with human data. It allows you to record projects, the data that you have in those projects, partners, which are the source or the recipient of data, contracts, and cohorts. It has this view and very, very essential GDPR jargon. So we have already deployed it in the LCSP. So we have our own list of index of PIs and what data they have. DAISY is essentially a bunch of web forms that would allow you to record this information. It would ping you to provide GDPR critical information, like the ethics approval. Why do you not have the ethics approval? Also, the storage location platforms for the data. If you share the data with a third-party country, where did it go? These kinds of information. Also, it tracks storage end dates and use restrictions using GA4GH codes. I have a poster still up there. We had very, very tough competition yesterday because our very important GDPR topic was placed next to the wizard with the fancy visualization. So we had tough competition. The source code has been put up 3 months ago, and we're now actively working for a release in August. We are in the process of deploying this in two institutes in Luxembourg and another one and another Elixir node internationally. And this is a team, you know, putting their time from now and then. It's a big team effort, so thanks to the team. Thank you.
Thank you both. So we have a couple of questions on Slido. First one is from Moni. So Monarch, is Mondo restricted to diseases that affect humans?
No, not necessarily. Mondo is actually meant to be an integrative ontology that is species agnostic, and there are included axiomatization to include information from Uveron and other ontologies, which are actually spread across different species, and we also have NCBI taxon restrictions.
Thank you. We also have one here from Kai about GDPR. So are there any rules on what is a sufficient level of protection for data? E.g., is having a code of conduct for names and emails enough?
Currently there are no set rules for what is enough, but as far as I'm aware, the BBMRI is working on a code of conduct for biomedical research. Having a code of conduct for email use, etc., is certainly helpful. What we're doing at the Institute right now is we're trying to be cautious and maybe doing a bit too much, but until a code of conduct for the entire industry is established, that's the way we move forward.
Thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 more questions, if anyone has any questions from the audience, or if you want to add anything to Slido.
I'm curious if there's been a GDPR audit of a research laboratory yet.
Yes. So I don't know if it's okay for me to say, but we have a biobank in Luxembourg, and we have recently received news that they have been audited, and so we are also ourselves are expecting an audit soon.
Any more questions? So I have one quick one, actually, about DAISY. I was curious, it looked like it was research generic. Is there anything specific to biology, or could it be used in any research area?
One of the institutes that we're deploying is on social research, but I would say there are, I think, a handful of attributes that are specific to biomedical research, but otherwise it's pretty generic.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so if there's no more questions, quiet pause. Oh, wait, there's one more on Slido. Okay, follow-up question. How do you know how GDPR audits are conducted?
So you will be audited by your national data protection authority, and it really depends. So they could come and so if they come to the university, for instance, they might ask, what data we have. They might want to see what restrictions we have on folders, if the documentation is complete, These are just things that come immediately to my mind.
Okay, I think it's time for coffee break. So thank you very much, everyone. A big round of applause to our fantastic speakers.